color going? This camera?
That one.
Okay. All right. All right. That one. Hello, everybody. Hello. I hope you are doing well. Why am I whispering? I am Sharindria Robinson.
I'm Marcus
I
Robinson.
am welcome to another edition of Faith, Family, and Finance. We are so happy to have you on tonight. Um, During our HBCU segment, I feel like my shirt needs to be like the top part needs to be um up here. You
You
just see
you should
alumni.
just be taller.
Oh, I should be taller. Oh, okay. I should just be a little taller. All
Hmm.
right. Well, thank you everybody for logging in. I'm excited about our conversation that we have tonight.
Should be interesting. Yeah, for sure.
And every Sunday night we come to you on this platform, Robinson Coaches. If you are watching us and you're watching us from another platform, then we ask you to come on over. Take a minute because we do share this to various places, but come on over to the Robinson Coaches platform and let's talk here so that we can engage and we can be interactive. We do have a couple of guests that will be on tonight. We have some that are will be joining us on screen, and we have some that will join us over the phone. So we want to say thank you in advance to our guests for joining us as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I guess we'll just start the conversation while we wait a little bit on them to come in. But
Someone said they didn't realize it was 9 o'clock. Right,
hey,
Michelle? I am with you. Like it is 9 o'clock.
it
I
came
can't.
fast this time.
It's because it's the holiday weekend and like time just kind of propel, just kind of sped up. I feel like. Let's see. Let me see. We are using a different platform today, so y'all just bear with me. I mean, as I am trying to see who all is joining us today, and because I'm using something new, and I know we always test and make sure we try everything out, but there's nothing like doing it real time, huh? Just kind of on the job training. But if you can comment, I see we have 7 viewers. Hey, JoJo, thank you. If you could just comment and let us know um, that you're on, that will one help me know exactly who's on the broadcast today. That's the easiest way. So if you just tell us hello and let us know who you are. Most of you, we know where you're from, but type in the comments where you're from. That will be perfect. And that will help us. Let's see. I think we have a couple guests. I don't know if our guests are waiting or we are
All right.
inviting them to the screen. Okay.
We're gonna try it again. We'll try to invite into the screen. Jordan says he's in there,
Okay, cool.
but I don't see.
Okay. Hey, Larisha. I know we just got off one call and on another one. Somebody else said they didn't realize it was 9 o'clock. This all the more. I got a couple of people. I was just on another call and I have some people who are on that call who joined me for this call. So I am. Hey, Takisa, how you doing, girl? It's so good to see you on. I am. Today we're going to talk about HBCUs. I have on my Clark Atlanta shirt, and Marcus has on his imaginary South Carolina State Bulldog shirt. And um, and we want to talk to you. Are HBCUs still relevant? Many of you, whether you went to an HBCU or not, you are not unfamiliar with HBCUs, historically black colleges or universities, or one of the terms that we will use tonight is PWI. So I'm gonna help everybody with our terminology. That means predominantly white institution. So if you took that college route, you either went to one or the other primarily, right? Yeah. Everybody who will be watching this, you went to one or the other. And during this time and during this climate where everything's going on, one of the things I'm sure that Marcus is going to bring up is that there are, I've seen, and I'm not on Facebook, I'm not on social media nearly as much during this time because I just have to take a sabbatical. But what I have seen just in the times that I've gone on and just looked at some of the posts is that there are several star athletes that are coming out of high school and they are choosing to attend historically black colleges and universities as opposed to maybe the predominantly white institutions that they have probably considered most of their career up until our world, our country, kind of hit the phase that we're in right now. And even though we don't see protests and we don't see marches every day, the movement is still going forward. and people are just moving in different ways. And when you begin to address the economics or hit the economic base of any institution, that's when people begin to wake up and listen. And so when we start talking about sports and what's happening with our in sports, then you can definitely know that you are messing with people's money. So I've seen several amazing student athletes decide that they are going to attend historically black colleges and universities. We know why many of those universities were started. We know how they were started. And, are they still relevant right now? I guess many would probably say yes, they are, considering like, where we are, what we live in, what the times that we live in.
Right.
But our historically black colleges and universities have struggled financially for a long time. And as many began, were starting to ask, were they even relevant as enrollments dwindle and the ability to attract the best talent for the classrooms, as far as the best instructors, that was not always a thing. But here we are in 2020, and we are definitely finding that we need our institutions now more than ever. And we just want to talk about it tonight. So, Marcus,
Hmm.
um,
Well, that's the thing about new platforms.
that's
It's
okay.
like they seem easy. You test and you have epic
That's
fails.
okay.
But I'll say this: um, as it relates to HBCUs, the real focus has to do with, okay, how do we look if we turn the clock, 50 years ago to the 1960s? How are HBCUs perceived then? You know what I mean? Because we had right now our HBCUs are on a decline, and so that wasn't an overnight process. And so 50 years ago, it was a situation where you didn't really have a lot of options. You couldn't go to a PWI, so everything was concentrated, and we seemed to have more strength at that point. Now it's a lot different, and I'm thinking 20 years, 30 years, 40 years from now is going to be even more different from the standpoint, a lot of people who are not of African descent are going to HBCUs, and so with the landscape changing, the resources changing, how is that going to impact our schools and impact our communities?
And I know when I was saying earlier, like you either went to PWI or Historical Black College and University, and I was like, I think, but I knew. So yeah, JoJo was like, yeah, let's you're like me and you lived in El Paso, Texas, and his school was primarily Hispanic. So yes, thank you very much. Making sure we have all of our bases covered as he attended
Right.
primarily Hispanic school. It didn't fall into either one of those categories that we mentioned. But let's talk about the money. Let's talk about it.
Well, the money is it's one of those situations where anytime you have well, let me just start by saying we got your
Okay.
private schools, right? You got your private HBCUs, you got your public schools,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so most of our private schools started out of some church reformation, some church movement, some slave revolt. And so, we have to understand how we came to be where we are.
Okay.
Then, of course, there are your land grant colleges and universities, which later became your state supported schools, like a South Carolina State. Um, and so they receive government funding um, to remain open and to enhance the education of those who go there. And of course, there are donations like any other school that you get. And the interesting thing about HBCUs really has to do with the fact that, okay, what do we do with the money? Do we get the same level of funding?
Mm-hmm.
Which we know is not true. We
Mm-hmm.
don't. But are we good stewards of what we have?
Wow.
That's the first question, and let's just say that we are. If we're doing the best job that we can with what we have, and we're still underfunded, what can we do about it? Is that a voting thing? Somebody has to vote in legislators. So do we need better representation? Do we need lobbyists? Uh, the role of alumni.
Okay.
So for instance, I know some of the PWI schools, they have um, huge alumni bases that give every year intentionally. When it comes down to life insurance, sometimes these people die and they leave huge endowments to their schools. That's not necessarily our community because we've not been taught to be that way.
Okay.
Okay. And so, we have Javertis Burnett, who's not a stranger by any means to this platform. He's going to call in and he's going to talk a little bit about his perspective. He's a product of a HBCU as well. It's not as great as South Carolina State, but we're gonna, for this conversation, we're gonna call it truth. Ain't that right, bro?
Hung up.
Okay. Did you say you about to hang up?
I almost hung up. I almost hung up.
Okay.
I almost hung up.
What was it?
For the greater good.
Okay. All right.
Good.
Greater good.
For the greater good. Go Tigers.
So when you finished in what year?
2006.
2006. Okay, I finished in 97. And I guess the interesting thing is I remember going to Savannah State for a few things, but the dynamics seem to be very similar to a South Carolina State in terms of the look of the college, everything. It was tidy, but it was just like South Carolina State. I mean, it was a very nice, neat campus, but it didn't have. You can tell it didn't have the same resources as a Florida State or a Clemson or or Furman. So, I guess from your experience, tell us a little bit about your HBCU experience.
So my HBCU experience overall, my HBCU experience was phenomenal. I absolutely love. I love the relationships that were built. I love the opportunities that were afforded to me. Opportunities to lead, to be intentional, to have mentorship and people who really care about you from a peer perspective and from faculty, staff, support system. I spent most of my junior and senior year, I was working practically full time in my field at my university.
Wow. Okay.
I don't see that would happen. It may have. I can't say that, but to have the vice president of business and finance say, "Hey, I know you want to be in the finance world. I know you want to understand these things. I want you to come and work in my office."
Wow.
Like that. I don't hear stories about like that often. So that was, my experience was amazing. I love Savannah. I love Savannah State. Of course, my daughter, Savannah. That's how much I love that place.
Oh, wow. You really love Savannah State. You named your daughter Savannah.
Wow. Right.
Wow.
So that's it. And I think that they play a vital role. I remember our motto at Savannah State was, "You can get anywhere from here." Mm-hmm. And many of my peers, and of course you got people everywhere that have bad experiences, and there's some of those at Savannah State as well that'll talk about their bad experiences and how horrible it was and yada, yada, yada. But for the vast majority of my peers and the people I was connected with, it was a different experience. We really feel like and felt like we could get anywhere from that launching pad. And many of us have accomplished great things and still striving to accomplish even greater things. So.
Javertis, let me say this because I'm glad you brought up mottos. And so what I'm going to challenge you to do in the comment section, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to type if you have a motto that you remember, no matter what school you went to. If you remember your school motto or anything like that, I'm going to challenge you to type that in the comment section. I attended the Clark Atlanta University. And when I'm talking to my students, even now, when I am teaching, I'm on any platform, I always find myself referencing the motto for Clark Atlanta University, which was find a way or make one. And it is like ingrained in me. It is like, it is in everything that I do. It's instilled in me. The whole find a way or make one is a part of my makeup. It's a part of my DNA. No matter what I'm doing, I just believe I have to find a way or make one. And so I like that you brought up I like that you brought that up. I am going to try to figure out how to bring our guests in on the screen. I have one more guest that we said we can bring in on the screen. If you're in the holding room, just let me know. I'll try to make sure I try to figure out how to bring you in. But I want you to type your motto. So type your motto in if you can remember it. And
I don't
somebody
remember.
say I don't remember. Oh, South Carolina State. You got some other South Carolina State people that are on here, but let's
Y'all
see
better help me out.
if you could bring that in, if you could talk about that or drop your comment in. But I do believe that's the thing about our schools, like they instill and ingrain, just certain information in you. You talked about the Black National Anthem. Lift every voice and sing.
Jesus.
It was required. Like we had to learn it. We had to learn all of the stanzas. You had to stand in front of the class. That was a part of your freshman orientation. You had to know it. It was a test. Like if you couldn't sing, it didn't matter. You had to stand in front of the group and you need to say everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dr. Henna, I'm just gonna need you to just follow directions.
Where am I from?
I need you to just
it's okay.
follow directions.
It's okay.
Anyway, but you're right. I mean, the funny thing is that South Carolina State, they had what they call freshman seminar, and so every Tuesday and Thursday, if you had a red and white bag, everybody on campus knew you were a freshman because you had to take it to that class. And that was the class where they taught you who you were and who you were going to be at this school. And, the interesting thing is my freshman seminar teacher, I cannot remember her name, but she had to be in her upper 80s, literally. And this is in 1992. So literally this lady's talking from the standpoint of, okay, I went to South Carolina State in the 30s, 40s. Wow. And so this is what it was. And this is the type of pride you should have going to this school. And this is what you do when you leave this school. And so, yeah, that lift every voice and sing. I mean, between her and being on the band and just having to just know it, not just know how to play it. You just had to know it. It was a big deal. It was about pride. It was about doing your best and representing that school. And so, I was having a conversation with my parents earlier, just talking about, the fact that some of the reason that we've seen a decline has to do with the fact that we've not been telling our story. So like having the conversation like we're having tonight, it's a one of positivity, but everything didn't go right at your school. No. But you still made it anyway because that's what was expected. And so one of the things that was major for me was teachers who cared enough to set high expectations, and they weren't afraid to get on your bad side. They weren't afraid of you. Right. They weren't afraid of you. They could care less whether or not you got mad. At the end of the day, they wanted to see you do a certain thing a certain way to get out of their class and represent this institution a certain way. And if you didn't do that, you will see them next semester until you learn, and every other semester until you learn to represent the school the way that they wanted you to represent it, because they were here first. Right. And, most people didn't like this thing when they say, look, I got mine, you got to get yours. That became adversarial over time. But the reality is they did have it. They had the power of the pen. They had the degrees on the wall, and you had nothing. I got you. And so it was up to you to figure out how to get something to become a colleague. Oh, yeah. I like Payne College. So put your school down too. My mom put Payne College. You can get anywhere from here. Moya McCoy. Let's see, Moya. The standard of excellence and education for life at the Hampton University. Montez, who didn't go to South Carolina State, but says your motto was "Come to our homecoming." I love it. I love what's going on right now. Come to our homecoming. You gotta love it. That sounds about right. Come to our homecoming. When is it?
Stop it. I'm sorry. I want to. Joseph. Okay, we can't forget. What school? Oh,
we can't pronounce.
Because he went to a predominantly Hispanic school. So we need you need to call in because we can't pronounce it. It was Latin for science and humanities. I want to share this story that just came to me via text, JB, and you can speak to this especially as an athlete. And thank you for Michelle for sharing this with me. This is a relative of hers and someone were sharing in the conversation, just text message, or it was posted online. But basically, the premise of the conversation was a reply to somebody who was saying Happy Independence Day, and this young lady did go to Claflin. I will say that she said that let me just read it the way it is. My ancestors were enslaved on July 4th, 1776. I played collegiate athletics at a historically black institution, which was founded when black people were not able to attend white institutions. Forgive me if I'm not in the mood. Okay, hold on 1 second. Hold on. It says, forgive me if I'm not in the mood to celebrate. And the person points out, and we may get this a lot, but that was your past.
Right.
So the person points out, but that was your past, and it doesn't excuse it. But now, today, you have every, and every is in all cap, you have every opportunity to attend any college in the United States. And in fact, you have an advantage over the majority of the population. So I would think, being an educated person, you would have to agree that things are better now. And I think I'm like, oh my gosh, was that like like just digging it, like stab you and then just turn it? Like, you would have to think, because you are an educated person, like that you are better now. Like you just know better now. Right. Things are better now, and you have to believe that. And I think that's what people believe. I'm definitely for people going to any and every school that they want to attend. But for those of you, even if you didn't go to college at all, you know, if you have children, grandchildren, godchildren, and you start thinking about how we begin to shape their mind about the schools that they will begin to attend. Javertis, this young lady said that she played collegiate. She was an athlete while in college, and I think you mentioned being an athlete while in college. What do you say to the people who say, "Wait, you're educated. You can go anywhere you want to go. Things are better now. So why would you still choose to go to an HBCU?"
Well, I would say, because as someone who did choose to go to an HBCU, much to my mother's chagrin, I had offers. I could have went anywhere academically because of my test scores and all of these things. I could have went anywhere. I mean, from Harvard to Yale, you name it, I could have went.
Say what now? Not just playing.
Say what?
I'm just playing. I know I'm joking.
Right. So
need my mama to fact check that.
Go right ahead. Go right ahead. I think to this day, I think that's why she didn't drop me off at school, but that's a whole nother story for another day. But so it wasn't about, for me, it wasn't about, and for many people, it wasn't about, hey, this is all that you can do, so go here. And I think what people fail to realize, these same people fail to realize, like, yes, we've made progress, but acceptance and equity are different things. Being able to do something, even if you want to take it back, this is faith, family, and finances. If you want to take it back to faith, Paul said, everything is permissible, but not all things are profitable. Mm-hmm. And just because you have the opportunity to do something does not mean that it isn't in your best interest. And I don't think that we can measure a level of growth or better or worse in our country or in our nation just because white folks say, okay, it's okay to come to my school now.
Gotcha. Because we couldn't go. There was a time we couldn't go. As this young lady stated, there was a time when we could not attend those schools, and now we can attend those schools.
And it wasn't that long ago.
Wasn't that long ago?
Right. It wasn't that long ago at all. And I think as for white people, a lot of white people, I think get that mixed up. Like, oh, look at all this progress that we've made. And I think a lot of black people, unfortunately, I think a lot of us fall into that trap too. That because it's white, it's better. Or because it's white, there's more opportunity. Or because it's white, this is this. Now I'm going to be better prepared, and I'm going to be this, and I'm going to be this. Like, no. In the famous words of Justin Bieber, the grass is greener where we water it at.
Oh.
And it's going to be life is going to be what you make it. And every opportunity that I've been afforded by my wonderful HBCU, I've grabbed a hold of and taken advantage of. And if you ask my kids right now, hey guys, where y'all going to school at? They're going to yell loud, SSU. Not that I've told them, not that I've done it, but they know the passion that I have for it. They hear me talk about it. We go back, we go and visit. The kids see it. Like and it's just, it's one of those things that is like, yeah, I can go wherever. I can go to Clemson. I can go to Furman. I can go to wherever. I can go to In the case of my Georgia folks, I can go to Georgia Tech. I can go, whatever school I want to go to. I can go to Emory, whatever. But just because you're allowed to doesn't mean that it's going to be the best thing for you. And I don't think that there's a better or worse here. I think it's what's going to be best for that individual. But I do want my institution to be around so that my kids have that option. And so I'm going to be a proud alumni. I'm going to continue to give. I'm going to continue to support. And when I die, I'll be giving from the grave. I
knew you were going to go there because this young man, thank you, Javertus. Yes. I knew he was going there. I knew he was going there because, and I've seen it. I know he has this set up this way, but he literally said when he died, he knows that money is going to his institution. He's going to continue to give. And you do know this to be true, family. If you don't know it to be true, that there is a space on your life insurance policy where all those beneficiaries that you leave, you can leave money to your nonprofit organization. You can leave it to your church and you can leave it to your school. As Javertus has already stated, he has money earmarked. So when he is dead and gone, South Carolina State. Did I say South Carolina State? Oh, I almost gave him a heart attack. Savannah State. I'm sorry, Savannah State will know who he is. And Savannah
Feel
State,
free.
Whatever. Savannah State will get a check. Speaking of South Carolina State, I don't know why I can't bring this man to the screen, but we have Dr. Lamont Hinton, and from a graduate of the
South Carolina State University.
Yes, to come in. Dr. Hinton, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You want to weigh in, sir?
You still there?
He's still there.
I'm still here.
Yep.
I'm listening.
Okay.
I'll say you sleeping.
I'm listening. I'm trying to figure out why I can't come on screen.
I know, because I want you on this screen. I'm trying to figure it out too. If you get some tips, text me and I can pull you up on here.
Saying your end needed to bring me in. So.
Why is it saying that? Okay.
Good here.
Hey, we just gonna treat this like this is the early 90s and we didn't get what we wanted then either. So that's what it is.
Moya says that going to a HBCU like Hampton cultivated my leadership, character, and responsibility, and you simply can't get that up from PWI. He said it. I'm just reading it. I love it.
Oh my
goodness. Love it. Let us hear from Doc.
So Doc, what you got?
I want to, I guess, start with Mr. McCoy going to an HBCU like Hampton cultivated his leadership, character, and responsibility. You simply cannot get that from the PWI. Mostly that you're getting from the PWI is the Black Student Union. And the Black Student Union does not give you the HBCU holistic experience. So even when it comes down to homecoming, now you have the African American students, they're having their separate homecoming the day of homecoming. That's still not giving you the HBCU experience.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And that phrase in and of itself is different. You know, you don't really hear about the PWI experience, but you do hear about the HBCU experience. Take a few minutes to tell me about yours. We've been knowing each other since 1993. So our experience, we have a lot of similarities in our love for our university, but just talk a few minutes about yours.
My experience at SC State was great. If I had a chance to do it over, I would do it over again. The friends that you meet in college, those are your lifetime friends. I mean, from student life to academic life to the arts component at State. I mean, just the holistic part. I mean, we had a great time at South Carolina State University. So I wouldn't trade it for the world. Although going to HBCU was not my first choice because I went to all white schools, elementary through high school. So our counselors, they were like, with the black students, y'all going to a black school and all this. Yeah, we going to a black school. You know, at that time, you know, different world was hot.
Exactly.
School days had been out for about 3 to 4 years, something like that. So we was like, yeah, this is what we're going to do. So that senior year, a black teacher, I can't remember who she is now, but she coordinated the Black College tour, and that tour just like really changed everything for us, and we was like, wow. So majority of us, we went to HBCUs, and we don't regret it.
Now that's interesting that you would say something about a different world, Cosby Show. It's interesting. That was a different time. This was like the first time on TV that I know of that HBCUs had been represented. You didn't see HBCUs on Good Times. You didn't see HBCU shirts being represented on the Jeffersons, but you did see it on the Cosby Show, and you saw it a lot on the Cosby Show. And then the spinoff A Different World highlighted HBCU life. And so we saw certain aspects of ourselves, which made us want to, become a part of that whole culture. And at that time, hip hop was just starting to really, really take fruit. So we saw all of these artists. They would come to our HBCUs, and we would, get a chance to meet the artists. We didn't have social media, so we took pictures or we got autographs, that kind of thing. Yeah, I know. I just dated myself when I said autograph. But that's what it was. That's what it was, So it was, I think the HBCU experience more so, it's just a sense of pride. And it's one of those situations, our situation, our experience in life is different. So I think I said it last week, as Jesse Jackson mentioned, look, anytime America catches a cold, Black America catches the flu. Hey, Corona. So I know. So it's just one of those situations, our schools and our institutions are no different. So, the reality is our counterparts, our white counterparts, they have a lot more to work with, and they've always had a lot more to work with. All we're saying at this point, and the whole point of, believe it or not, this particular conversation has to do with making sure that people that look like us start to take care of what it is we founded, and making sure that we have a real understanding that what we founded was not good, it was great. And the reality is it can be offensive to anybody who's not used to free people talking like that.
Right.
But,
go ahead.
But any institution that's lasted 100 years or more is a great institution.
And it is. And I want Dr. Hinton, Gerardus, or anybody to speak to this, Marcus. What we've done for so long, though, we have to admit what we've done, even with some of our own institutions. We know that when it comes to HBCUs, they will give students a chance. Some students a chance that other institutions may not give them a chance. My brother mentioned he was an excellent test taker. Did great on all these standardized tests. Same mama, same dad, I can't take no test. I cannot take standardized tests. Graduate at the top of my class, but don't put a standardized test in front of me. And so we will say things like, by our institutions, they work with those students. We will accept the C students. We will accept, those things. So I think for a long time, we got this, there was this misconception or this misunderstanding that if you can't get in anywhere else, then you go to a HBCU because you are not good enough. And I think that goes back Michelle sent to me from that text message. People really do believe but you're smart, or you're a good test taker, so you should realize things are different now, because they always look at our schools being a place for people who can't do any better. And then we get this stigma, and we'll say, okay, well, I don't want, unless we graduated from it, we don't want to always send our child there, or our nieces there, our nephews there, because it's become filled with students who are who some would just term are categorized as mediocre. How do we get rid of that stigma? And as many of you said, you had multiple choices and you chose HBCU, but how do we get rid of that stigma?
Either one of y'all can take that one.
Well, I'm going to let the good doctor elaborate, but the simple answer for me is I think we got to redefine what good is. We got to redefine what success looks like. And we got to stop letting people tell us what's good. without proving it to us over time. I don't have all the statistics in front of me, but one of my great friends, Dr. Justin Ballinger, argued this point all over the nation about the power of HBCUs and the power of just having Black professionals and leaders in front of Black students. And he talks about how not only do we, have to shift and change that definition or defining what excellence or success and all of these things look like, is we have to take the initiative to define what we want, to Moyer's point and earlier about the opportunities in leadership and what Dr. Henry said. Like, you just can't get that stuff from most PWIs. And are we going to let, like, how many 1,400 plus SAT scores or how many 4.0 GPAs you take in define, like, the total measure of success? Mm-hmm. Or are we going to be able to say, hey, what was the fruit of this thing? Like, what happened after the fact? Mm-hmm.
Dr. Hinton?
Wow.
And that's great. Was that Mr. McCoy?
No, that's Mr. Javertis Burnett.
Okay, good. That was a great question. I think once we understand the purpose of HBCUs, the debate it isn't new, and it continues to loom us largely. Is HBCUs relevant? Mm-hmm. I think the difference is, once we understand that there's a difference between relevant and relic, then we can understand what we're asking people. And I think many of us as scholars, when we go to conferences and symposiums and stuff, our counterparts of another persuasion, they're always asking us, are HBCUs relevant? Well, why are you asking us that? Because it's actually an irrelevant question that you're asking us, because that means you're not understanding the landscape of higher education as it relates to HBCUs. HBCUs has been the cornerstone of higher education. We can go back to 1837 when the first HBCU was founded, which was Cheney University. So we have been the cornerstone for higher education. So that means our traditions, our legacies, they run deep, and they have provided equal access to us as high quality education for countries. So just not only the United States, but we're talking about for countries, for African Americans. So I can go on now, but I'll stop.
Well, if I remember correctly, weren't you a history major?
Yeah, at some point, man. History ed with a minor in Black Studies.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, so we got definitely the right people on this platform tonight. What's interesting, though, one thing that I guess we need to discuss is the metrics in which we define greatness. Mm-hmm. Right now I heard both of you talking about the narrow scope in which we define greatness in terms of GPA, in terms of test scores, which are nice indicators, but the reality is, what happens when you're finished? That's the first thing. And then the second thing is, recently, I guess in the last couple of days, LeBron James's son is considering Howard University instead of a PWI to attend school and play basketball. And we hope this becomes a trend, because what's happened, if you look at 50 years ago, because we didn't have the opportunity to play at PWI schools, the reality is we kept all of our talent in-house. And so we were able to concentrate that talent to go to the NFL, to the NBA, and to all of these other different places. And so right now we're scattered, and we literally are pawns in someone else's hand. Mm-hmm. So if you get hurt, they don't care whether or not you finish. They're just trying to figure out how to recoup the money so they can get it to the next guy who they can come, to our neighborhood and snatch up and take to another school. If you remember, it was Dr. E.B. Du Bois who talked about the talented 10th. And what's interesting is the talented 10th was never an issue in our community until integration. It was only after integration when our talented 10th in our communities were taken and they were deported to other communities. Absolutely. When our communities begin to fall apart. So what I want to, I guess, put out there now to everybody on this platform is, what should we do with the talented 10th now? How should we encourage them to come back to HBCUs and come back to our communities to strengthen our communities, or continue to strengthen others? That's for anybody. Do what y'all want with that.
Yeah, that is right, Jojo. I think that is the I think that's the school, but that's still HBCU as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm gonna shoot myself with this one, Marcus. I'm gonna take the first clause of that, and I think that dealing with the talented 10th, yeah, I believe that we must come back, and we must come back and invest into our communities, into our schools. Contrary to public belief, our Black student graduates, they graduate at a much higher rate, than our counterparts at PWIs. And I think once we put data out there, because a lot of people don't know data and don't know statistics, then we're just gonna go on to back to the is HBCUs relevant? But once we understand statistics out there about our graduates of HBCUs and how they represent a significant portion of a successful professional, then we can talk like 3%. I may be off, maybe a percentage or so, but 3% of our nation's higher education institutions are African Americans. African Americans represent 20% of our African American graduates. 25% of that we represent in the STEM field. So I think that, once we get those statistics out, and we educate our community, because it's about community. And I think we talked about that like last week or 2 weeks ago. Community is just not church, but community is outside of church as well. And so once we educate those different counterparts, about HBCUs and the relevancy of HBCUs, not why they're relevant, but the relevancy of HBCUs, and then we can go from there. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. How do we educate though? So, like, for instance, what do we say to that, that mother, that father that's about to send their 17, 18-year-old child to somebody's school? What do we say to them to say, look, have you considered Howard? Have you considered South Carolina State, Savannah State, Clark,
Hampton,
Atlanta?
Payne, Clark, Atlanta, Benedict.
Right.
Voorhees.
All the schools that's represented and listed on this.
Claflin.
That's produced all these great people. What do we say? Because, if you're looking at, scholarship money, if you're looking at people who may be musical, athletic, whatever, what do we say? Do you turn that scholarship down and take a smaller scholarship to go to a smaller school, a HBCU? What do we say?
Marcus, I think it's important that we say what you just said, man. What I'm finding out, so I've been volunteering just being here in Greenville since I've been in South Carolina. What I'm finding out is a lot of our people don't even know what an HBCU is. That's especially scary. In a place like the upstate that's removed from the area where most of the HBCUs in the state are. I volunteer at 4 schools in the upstate, and I'm always having the conversation, have you considered an HBCU? And students and parents alike are like, what? Huh?
What is that?
So I think we start as simple as it sounds with that very question. Have you guys considered an HBCU, whether it's the parent or whether it's the child? And then I think we follow that up with some of those statistics. I think that is an opportunity for us to educate. And I think I take it for granted growing up in a place where we had Upward Bound and we had ETS. And so we were going on college tours and we were doing all this stuff. But there's not a whole lot of that here in the upstate of South Carolina that I've seen since I've been up here. And I talk to so many students who just don't know. And then we can go into and having a conversation. Well, did you know that less than 3% of the universities in the country are HBCUs? However, we represent 44% of all African American graduates in the country. And so people are going to other schools, but what are they doing when they get there? Because according to the statistics, the most relevant ones I could find in our quick conversation right now, back to 2017, they're not graduating from these other institutions. They're not finishing at these other institutions, so they're leaving these other institutions, quite frankly, with a ton of debt and no degree.
Wow.
Well, yeah, and we talked about that a while back about the amount of debt, student loan debt that people are getting, not just at PWIs, but just in general, But the reality is, you are right. If you're gonna go to school and you're gonna get that, you might want to have a job after this thing is finished.
Dude, I cannot tell you how many people I sit down and there's like, oh, I got all this student loan debt, and I'm like, oh yeah, where'd you go to school at? Oh, I went to Clemson. Oh, I went to Furman. Like, oh, okay, what year you graduated? I know some folks that went there. Well, see what happened, and it's like, okay, like, yeah, I was good enough to get in, but I wasn't good enough for you to care for, to challenge me and to push me and pull me along to lift as we climb, so to speak, as we like to say.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're good enough. You're good enough for me to take your tuition money and for you to take out a loan to pay me and put money in my pockets, but you're not relevant enough or important enough for me to make sure that I see this thing through with you.
Right.
Wow.
And you're exactly right. And you're spitting out statistics, and Dr. Hinton is, and I want to lift up one that Moya has posted on the screen. I think both of you guys can see this, but when we started talking about this world that we live in now, where we have this whole diversity, equity, diversity, and inclusion is a big topic now. It's definitely something that's needed in the workforce, and those students are thriving at 40% more, I guess, higher than graduates from non-Black schools. But at Black schools, recruiters come looking for students, and at PWIs, they only look for the highest graduates, the graduates that got the highest GPAs. And and like you said, whether we graduated or didn't graduate, if we got the highest GPAs, again, having the highest GPAs doesn't necessarily make us the best students, as Marcus. Just sometimes a good old C student, end up being the most successful
I'm just saying.
person out there. Strong B. You weren't a C student. You but BC, whatever, BC.
Lord, I can't say that without Benedict.
You can't say that, okay, because that means Benedict College. See, people who went to state can't even use simple acronyms like BC.
Tell them that.
But simple letters. But no, I think everybody just bring up such great points. I want us to, look at. There are people on here who are making sure that they promote and they lift the platforms of HBCUs. Javerta's mentioned Upward Bound. I have been with that other school, your rival, Benedict College. I've been working with their Upward Bound program for 14 years now. And I love that we're able to always take our students on tours to these different institutions, especially the HBCUs. Recently, we've been taking them. They've been requesting, to even go to some other schools, but they have been going to the HBCUs.
Just listening. What's that?
What happened here? I want to lift up two things. JoJo said, how do you give if you haven't been able to? If you didn't attend a HBCU, but you want to donate, I promise you, if you go to any platform, go to Clark Atlanta's website, and there, you can donate. You can say you're my brother, donate in my name. But you can go to any school's website if you want to be more intentional. You can definitely reach out. I think anybody on this platform has strong connections with their schools to say if you want to target your gift, to say specifically where your gift is going. But HBCUs are always in need, and they're always accepting donations just generally through their website, almost like any other company. I want to speak to, though, if you want to take it a step further, Cottrell mentioned most of our schools are in blighted communities, and they are in communities that do need developing from a commercial or real estate standpoint. And we don't have even enough time on this platform to talk about how we can begin to, develop the areas. Now, some schools have done a great job in terms of going in and helping to make the area better, but there's just always more room for improvement. And a lot of times that's what makes some families, there's a little bit of trepidation around, sending my child there. Like, they look at the community around it, like the school is great, but then they look at the area around and they think about crime and poverty and all of those areas. But I would just say we have to look past that, continue to send our students to our schools, but also look at, on a different live, how we can go in and develop. And for those of you looking for real estate development opportunities, develop those areas. Let me stop because we have some more people who want to share and want to um, chime in. The UNCF College Fund. Yes, that's another way in which you could give, where we learn that a mind is a terrible thing to waste. But UNCF College Fund is another way if you want to donate to HBCUs.
Absolutely. Now, one thing, and it's interesting that you would say something about community development. What was interesting, and this is a horrible statistic, but it was just true. When I went to school in Orangeburg in '92, Little Orangeburg, South Carolina was the number three. It was number three as far as the murder capital in the U.S.
Wow.
Number three, Orangeburg, South Carolina. This is 1992. And what's interesting is I have a very special guest on the line. My dad is on the line. He probably did. I don't know if he knew or not that that he was sending us into a dangerous situation. But the reality is, at the end of the day, I was going down there to get a degree. That's what I was sent down there to do. And so, it was interesting that I didn't even get into a whole lot of what Orangeburg looked like. At the time, it only had two restaurants, Quincy's and Shoney's. That was it. And so I know there are a few people on here who can vouch for that. But it was only two restaurants, and we walked to them. And of course you had McDonald's. But the reality is, it wasn't about the surroundings. It was about the fact that we were trying to experience something new. I was 150 miles away from home, and I was trying to figure out how to be grown.
Right.
That's what it was. But at the end of the day, I learned a lot about life. I learned people. I learned how to do stuff. And I had teachers that held me accountable, whether I liked it or not. Mm-hmm. And they echoed a lot of what my parents had said earlier.
Got it.
And so I think that's part of what HBCUs bring to the table. I was having a conversation with my parents earlier, and we talked about how nobody's telling our story. And so I thought it was really, really fitting that we could have one or both of them on tonight just to talk about that story, because the reality is they're both products of HBCUs, and my brother and I are products of HBCUs. And so, I think it would be really good at this point, Pop, if you just talk a little bit about why HBCUs exist and your experience at your school.
Okay. Schools obviously are very relevant. 50 years ago, I've been out of school 50 years. I finished in 1970 with a degree in biology at Barbara Scotia College in Concord, North Carolina. So I think that at that point, that was my only avenue, if you will. Back in those days, it was segregated. However, they introduced the year I graduated, integration. Prior to that, it was basically we went to the HBCUs. And I think that I arrived at a very good education, had a very good career, now on 4 businesses. So it's really an avenue for a lot of folks that look like us. I think that so often there's a misnomer sometimes in terms of I have a child, I have children, I want them to go to a majority university. Basically, there's nothing wrong with that if you have different motives for that, reasons for that. But I think so often we don't tell our story in terms of just what the byproducts are when you go to a historically black university or college. And one of those byproducts is that basically those professors, those administrators at those black institutions are an extension of your parents. And so you wind up getting some coverage or governance in terms of what you should do in non-academic situations. I think you're going to get a good academic education in a black college and university, but the byproduct is something that you just sort of don't realize, that you come out as being a total person. They shape you in terms of dress, they shape you in terms of attitudes, and they prepare you to step into the world. And one of the things in stepping into the world, you will have gone through some things that wasn't quite jam up, if you will. The administration wasn't tight, if you will, but you learned in that setting to cope with that and deal with that and come out successful with that. So as a result, you wind up being stronger. And so when you get out here in the world and there's somebody throw you a curve, well, you've seen that before. You know you have to exercise some extra gray matter to overcome that because you had it back on a black campus, if you will. And so it's those kind of things that I think so often people dismiss, if you will. Another thing that I think that is sort of not noticeable or given is that when you graduate, whether it's a predominantly black school or a majority university, if you will, college, is that now you're still of color, okay? You're still of color, so you're going to have to take that on, okay? And so industry, businesses don't look at you that you finished a majority school and therefore you may have an extra leg up and you're going to get this job opportunity. No, they look at you as a person of color first, okay? And they will make an assessment from your dress to your speech. And so it doesn't all of a sudden you have just been nullified in terms of going to a majority school. You still have to compete in terms based on your color first. Now you may know the answer to cancer and whole pit, but you do not get there unless they make until they make that assessment. I'm looking at a black A student from say one of the largest universities here in the state, if you will. So, I think so often people miss that piece thinking that they're going to have a leg up because they went to a majority university. That's the furthest thing from the truth.
So
really, really, out here in the real world, you're going to be of color first. And once you know that, then you can deal with it. Here again, you will have gone through some things on the black campus that you know would have seen before.
So, Pop,
that's my assessment in terms of are they relevant? Yes, they are. And can they give you a good quality education? Yes, they can. But they also give you basically some byproducts of education by being an extension of perhaps your parents or your grandma.
So Pop, let me ask you this. We have Javertis Burnett on, and we have Dr. Samuel Hinton on as well. And I asked this question of them, and I want to get your take on it. So, what do we say to the parent that's about to send their 17-year-old, their 18-year-old kid to somebody's school? What do we say to them about getting them to a HBCU? How do we introduce that conversation? Because I mean, being from the upstate, there is no HBCU representation. So, I mean, I know what y'all did with us, but what would you say to that parent?
I think to a parent who have a 17-year-old and they're exploring the possibilities of going to a college, I think that we have to somehow show them some role models. Because I think people, things are visual for them, they can connect better. So they have to point to role models in the community and look at the history of that role model. If you're looking at someone in my age group, if you will, or better still, when you guys went to college, we could point to a lot of black educators. We could point to a lot of business people, if you will, that made it and they went to a historical black university. And you tell the story of how they went through that, and they can visually see how successful that person is. But if we don't tell the story and point to those individuals, then I think that family may make a decision in a vacuum, meaning that they will say, okay, the majority school got more majors, large university, more funds, etc., all the above. But that may not be the whole story, and that's not the whole story. When I look back on my education, it's been 50 years ago, but we had the Thurgood Marshalls, we had the Jesse Jacksons of the world, and we had individuals, Dr. Drew. We had all those individuals that we can look to that made contributions. And then here again, locally, we had teachers and people around us, that's what we saw. We saw a black principal, you know, and we saw him in the community as well. You know, those kind of things are just really, I guess, timeless in terms of people visually seeing what we can be. You know, there's an old saying that basically people will be what they see. And that's so true. You know, so we have to tell the story verbally. And I think we also have to then point to individuals who have been successful and who have been products of historical black universities.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, actually, to all of the sirs. This has been great, y'all. It is 10 o'clock. People were chiming in at the beginning of our broadcast saying it is 9 o'clock. They can't believe it's 9 o'clock. And now I'm saying, wait, there's still so much more to say, and it is 10 o'clock. I want to start by just saying thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to our guests. Definitely to our father, Mr. Thomas Robinson. Again, he talked about being out of school 50 years now from Barbara Scotia University. Dr. Lamont Hinton, South Carolina State University, and Javertus Burnett, Savannah State University. Thank you all so much. We're going to do it again, and I promise, Dr. Hinton, we're going to figure out this platform. You're going to be on the screen next time. You won't have to call in. Let's try it again next week. Thank you guys so much, all of you, for all of your comments. You've definitely enriched the conversation on tonight. Let us make sure that we go out and continue to share the story, tell the story, just like shopping with yes, Mom, this was just part one. You'll be on for part two.
Yeah.
But just as we have to shop and we support local black owned companies, our churches, we have to make sure that we continue to support our institutions, whether you attended an HBCU or not. HBCUs are still your institution. You own them. It is because it's a part of our community.
Absolutely. And so this is a conversation that can't be had just once. I mean, the conversations that we are intentional about having now, we're going to be having them often. And it can be, the reality is we have to be intentional about doing it. And we can't be bashful about doing it, because right now, if you look at all of the statistics, people that look like you and I are in the negative. And so we can't be bashful about being last. We can't be bashful about not producing and not knowing. And so part of there is an education gap. And I think we have to, at some point, redefine what education really means. Because if we're looking at it again in those very narrow metrics about, okay, you made a 4.0, so somehow or another you are better than everyone else, even though you have more debt than everyone else, or that you made better test scores, but you can't talk to people and you can't connect with people and you don't necessarily know how to be a producer or a go-getter. We have to begin to redefine what that means. And so what that means in 2020 is not the same thing it meant in 1990 or 1970. So we have to start talking about what's relevant now and making sure that going forward, that we will still remain relevant. Because for us, we still got 3 little Hebrew boys that's got to go through somebody's school.
My kids that. Okay, y'all.
And so, the reality is, if we're building houses, I expect for them to be building community.
All right.
And so it's the expectation that we set today that they're going to have to live up to, just like the expectation my parents set a while back. Well, I guess still setting, that we have to live up to.
So basically, he's saying all that to say there'll be part 2 next week. So let's just come back and we'll continue. We try so much not to take you over the time, but thank you so much for being patient with us on this evening. We thank all of our guests again for joining us. Let's give them all a round of applause, and we will definitely see you back here again next week.
All right.
Thank you, y'all. Have a great day.
Hey, y'all.